Max is winning in Qatar, and I'll tell you why. So you know how McLaren has been really quick at pretty much every track for the whole season? A big part of that is that McLaren manages to keep their tyres cooler than most of the other teams for the duration of the race. And the way that they do that is pretty genius. This is an F1 tyre attached to an F1 car. If we remove the tyre, it exposes the drum, which is that roundish sort of carbon fiber bit in the middle of your screen. Let's make it larger, and let's turn that drum into a simple illustration for our purposes. Now, if you were to look inside the drum, you would see the brake pad, which is represented by this black rectangle. Over the course of the race, that brake pad gets extremely hot under braking, sometimes over 1,000 degrees Celsius. And of course, when you have 1,000 degrees Celsius piece of carbon, it emits a lot of heat inside the drum. That extreme heat emanating from the brake pad inside the drum inevitably heats up the drum itself, which is in direct contact with the tyre. And this causes overheating issues as the inside of the tyre becomes hotter under heavy braking. But what if that could be minimized? Have you ever noticed F1 drivers wearing these ice packs around the paddock before a race? Now, obviously we know that ice cools things down, right? But have you ever thought to think why that actually happens? When a substance changes its state of matter, for example water going from solid ice to liquid water and then into a gas, it uses an extraordinary amount of energy. And I want to be specific here. It's the actual changing of the state of matter that is consuming the energy. It's an energy-intensive process. So that's why when a Formula One driver puts ice against himself right before a race, the ice is actively drawing heat away from his body in order to use that heat as energy for it to change its state of matter. Now, different substances use different amounts of energy in order to change their state of matter. And there are certain types of materials called phase-changing materials that specifically use an enormous amount of energy to make that change. That means they have really high melting points most of the time, and when they do change from a solid into a liquid, they just absorb a ton of heat in order to complete that process. So what if you could put one of these phase-changing materials inside your brake drum? Well, the leading theory is that McLaren has done just that. And what does that mean? That means that the heat is kept away from the inner tyre, allowing the tyre to stay cooler for longer. So that's their advantage. But why won't it work in Qatar? Qatar is well known as a track that has extremely high degradation, and it usually chews through tyres. So surely that's exactly the kind of track where McLaren would have an advantage because their tyres will stay less worn than the rest of the field, right? Wrong. For the 2025 season, the FIA has implemented a mandatory two-stopper for Qatar. They've essentially said that you can only run a single tyre compound for a maximum of 25 laps. And since the race is 57 laps long, that means that every car will have to stop twice. And since the cars have to stop twice, that means that no one will at any point be running on tyres that are extremely worn, which means that everyone will in general be on relatively fresh tyres, which of course nullifies McLaren's advantage. This championship is happening. Alright, so with that said, some predictions. In 5th place, I'm putting George Russell. I think that Mercedes has been in fantastic form for the past couple of races. I think they have clearly found some pace in the end of the season. It's also a night race, so we won't be seeing... Is it a night race? Let me check. Is Qatar a night? It is a night race, right? It's also a night race in the desert, which means that temperatures will be considerably lower than we've seen in, for example, the European leg of the championship. And as we know, Mercedes does well when it's not too hot. P4, Oscar Piastri. I don't think that the McLaren is going to be terrible. I think it will be most likely the second fastest car, maybe the third fastest car this weekend. I don't think that Piastri is necessarily going to finish ahead of Norris. I haven't really seen anything from the past few weekends to suggest that he has genuinely found something. But I think he'll do well. I think he'll finish in the top 5. P3, Lando Norris. I think that's the best he'll be able to do in the McLaren. As I said earlier, I think that a lot of McLaren's big advantage that they've had over the past year is not going to work at this track under these conditions. So yes, I think he'll struggle to fight for the win. I don't think that's going to be on the table, but I do think he'll do well. P3, podium. P2, I'm still on the hype train. Kimi Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli has been on the absolute form of his very short career. I have been hugely impressed by him over the past few weekends. And if you saw my last video talking about how he was the fastest man on track in the previous race, you know that I rate him and I rate his current form. So I hope it continues in Qatar. And finally, you could have guessed, Max Verstappen. Max is another driver who has been on unreal form lately. I want this to happen. I want this championship to go to the line, and I want it for Max. So I am hoping and praying for a P1 finish for Max Verstappen. Put your predictions in the comments, and I'll chat to you again after the race. Cheers.